Well, I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for coming on this hot day. We have got aircon in here, which is rather nice. At least it is nice for those of you sitting right beside it. Well done. So could I invite Dean David to say the friends?
So I'd like to lead us in this prayer, but invite you to join with me as I get very lonely if it's just me. So let us pray. O Lord Jesus Christ, in whose name our Cathedral Church is dedicated, grant that its life and worship may ever abound to your greater glory, and that as friends we may do our part by prayer and offering to strengthen its witness to all the world, who with the Father and the Holy Spirit live and reign ever one God. Amen.
Thank you, David. Now, we need to have, I think, the apologies for absence. Oh, and you're not here. Right, I will read out the apologies for absence and please let me know if you can't hear. Pim Baxter, Francis Brown, the Lady Colbrain, the Lord Mayor and the Lady Mayoress, Sheila Castle, Emma Clark, Wheezy Cottrell, Kathleen Port, Christopher Daniels, Kate Hall, Richard Hall, David Hamilton, Anne-Marie Innes, Rebecca Lilly, Alison Mercer, Ian Morris, Chris Pascal, David Reed, Janice Reed and John Williams. And if anyone is aware of anyone else whose name they would like to have on the apologies for absence, please let Caroline know. Now, you had the minutes sent to you by email, and I'm sure everyone will have read through them with a fine-tooth comb. Can we approve the minutes of the AGM last year? Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, David. Are there any matters arising? No? Jolly good. In that case, can I please ask Dean David to return and give his report?
So, even with my glasses, it's hard to read my own writing. I did originally plan to be a doctor, which explains the bad writing, but then I realised that wouldn't quite work out if I keeled over in front of the patient. So there we go. It's lovely to see you and lovely to welcome you all back here to your place. And as ever, to frame everything that I want to say with the note of thanks. Thanks for what you do, for who you are. Thank you for being ambassadors for the Cathedral, for interested friends, at times critical friends as well, which is all to the benefit of this place. And continue to encourage others to be part of this community as we continue to grow and develop. I wanted to highlight, to start in a very obvious place with one of the big highlights of recent times, which of course was in March when we had the installation of Sarah Mullally, Dame Sarah Mullally, as the 106th Archbishop of Canterbury. I hope that many of you saw that on television, if not in person in the building. And we felt it was a great day in every respect, a great day for Canterbury Cathedral and for getting out to the world a sense of who we are and what we're about. And I hope it offered a vivid little window into what's possible when you work hard across different partnerships and groups and with imagination and flair and tenacity and lots of hard work to deliver what we delivered. And I know Archbishop Sarah was incredibly grateful because basically the 3 or 4 months leading up to that, most of us on the staff weren't doing much else apart from preparing for that. Archbishop Sarah is endeavouring to shape her diary so that usually she'll spend one weekend a month in Canterbury, and I've already encouraged her that she should continue to do her shopping in Marks and Spencer's, because I know a number of you have met her there, and she realises that going out for a pint of milk is not simply going out for a pint of milk, but it's a good way for people to know she's around, as well as on a Sunday. You could be going to a little village church somewhere in the Diocese of Canterbury, and suddenly the Archbishop could well be taking your service. And she loves doing that because it very much keeps her feet on the ground, and it is what she was ordained for. Beyond everything else, that's what we were ordained for. And so we look forward to seeing her and Eamon around. You'll notice quite a lot of scaffolding on the Old Palace as they do more work. They're church commissioners, that's their responsibility, thank goodness, not mine. But she's got a house in the precincts, and she will move into the Old Palace when that is complete. Naively, they're talking about October. I sort of raised my glasses at that moment and said really? So that's been a big thing and a big moment in the life of this place. There are a number of projects which I won't mention them all, which the Friends are supporting, but ones that are really important. Yesterday, the day before, we had a little concert with the Country Youth Choir, which is a new development, which I'm really sad that I wasn't able to be at the concert, because everybody who I've met who went said they ended up in tears because it was so moving and so beautiful that so many children are able to come together and partake of our musical wealth of expertise in this place. And of course it also becomes a bit of a route through whereby children could apply to be members of the actual Cathedral choir as well. So that's really working well. We now have the permissions in place to begin the works on the apartment that is to be in Christchurch Gate. You will see the gate, and John and the Masons have a beautiful display here of the restoration of the gate itself, which is now very resplendent. But there are some rooms up in the gate which have been used for various things over various years, and we want to turn them into accommodation so that if, say, you were celebrating your Ruby anniversary or something like that, you come for a special weekend in a special place in Canterbury and enjoy being there. And we're just going out to tender for that. It's been delayed by planning issues, but we're making progress and that will come on board. And on the ground floor of the deanery, your Friends Council were able to come visit the other week and see the extraordinary transformation that's gone on in the creation of a new catering kitchen and new accessible lavatories on the ground floor of the deanery, so that the big sort of grand rooms in the deanery can be rented out for hospitality. It's one thing the Dean living in such a beautiful place, but it's really got to earn its keep, that house. Not just the Dean, but the house itself. And so we need to do some work. We need to pretend there's a big wedding going on and fill it full of glorious tables and flower arrangements and things like that. And then get the marketing out so that people could then think about booking it for special events. So we look forward to that coming online. And all of that's really important because the sustainability of the place is not only shaped by people, but it's also by pounds and pence as well. And just to update you a little bit on the sustainability and financial health of the cathedral, by the end of 2026, we will have paid off in its entirety the large loan that the chapter had to take out to cover COVID days. And so that will be paid off by the end of this year. Now, sadly, inflation and one thing and another, wars in the Gulf and all kinds of things like that, mean that, of course, prices and costs continue to rise, and they're rising faster than our income is. So even though we've cleared the debt, we are not out of the woods by any means. by any means. We had a National Cathedrals Conference recently in Bristol, and when we received some reports about the national health of cathedrals in England, 72% of our English cathedrals are in debt, and 63% are in serious debt. So there's a big national problem that we have, and we're trying to talk to government, to the church and various other bodies to see what can be done about that, because we recognise that we cannot sustain these things by ourselves. That doesn't mean to say we've stopped trying. We are trying, but things come our way. So we had the meningitis here in Canterbury. Do you remember that? Just before the Archbishop's installation, and 80% of the bookings in the lodge were cancelled. And that was the same across the whole of the town. So when people make comments about, oh, the town's not in such a good state as it was, it's things like that that make a huge, huge difference. And so many businesses and organisations, we really run on very, very small margins of error. And so something like that can have a big, lasting impact. The numbers of people coming to visit Canterbury is down 15% compared to last year, and last year was down 15% compared to COVID. That means actually numbers are now down 30% or more. And of course we rely on footfall, so we need to get people to come to Canterbury to support us. Just a little word about 2027. It's going to be a big year for the Friends, the centenary of the Friends, and my lips are sealed as to what's happening. But there are things planned which I know about, and probably some things I don't know about as well. And there's a great programme of things coming into being, so we look forward to a very great year ahead, and we've got some really interesting things which will command people's imaginations, and which indeed I hope, if we can pull some of them off, will really assist in making this place sustainable for the long term, including, I think I have to be involved with the Dean's Challenge, isn't that right? So I'm up for that, and I hope you will be as well. But also we're beginning, now that we've paid off the loan, we're beginning to think about the future and the next major projects that we need to have a go at trying to address. And so we made an initial application to the Heritage Lottery Fund with an idea of a project, and they came back to us saying that they would be very interested in us pursuing it further. So by the 6th of August, we need to make a major bid to the lottery for a project that has a working title, but it probably will change, of Cloister Quarter, which is really a project which is about £20 million in cost, and it will include the restoration of the 15th century ceiling and roof of the cloister, of the chapter house, and it also will equip the chapter house to be more usable for the other 6 months of the year, but it's not very usable because it's so cold. So we hope to do that work. We hope to do some restoration work on the cloisters and a bit of a light clean of the interior of the cloisters, and putting in additional utilities such as electrics and lightings and so on, so that we could put sculpture and that sort of thing in the cloisters, which would be attractive to people to look at and to light them beautifully at night, but to make that easy and possible and flexible over time. Also, we hope to do some work which will make accessibility improve into the cloisters, because you know the cloisters are much lower than the outside levels of the cathedral, and if we can open that up better, in the way the temporary ramp that's there now has helped, but it's a temporary solution. We need a better, longer term, more elegant solution, and that also would allow us to tell a bit of the story which you can still glimpse in the northern side of the building, namely the monastic story, which is so important to the life of the cathedral, but it's not told terribly well for your average visitor, other than what guides and so on tell you. And we know that that side of the cathedral needs a lot of attention, and this would be the first phase of a whole series of major projects that would look towards the north side of the cathedral. Rather than doing what the Canterbury Journey did and having one big project that covered everything and took years and years and years and years and years, we think, and the lottery think, it's better to do it in chunks. So it's still £20 million, so it's not an insignificant amount of money, which will take a lot of time and effort to do. But we hope to get that bid in by the 6th of August, and that then will take a lot of energy up in coming weeks and years. So that just gives you a little glimpse as to what's going on here, I'm around. I'm always very, very happy to ask questions, and I much prefer to do that face to face with people than the sort of emails you get, which is, "Dear Mr. Dean, why is it that?" It's very stark and starchy, whereas we want to encourage good conversations with one another. And sometimes I can solve things and sprinkle a little fairy dust here and there to make things happen. And sometimes I can't, and I'm deeply honest about that. So I'm trying to explain, if I can't, why not? So thank you, keep in touch, and enjoy the afternoon.
Thank you very much, Dean David, and special thanks for the fairy dust that you do find. Now, in the latest edition of the Friends newsletter, we explained that whilst we don't currently have a vacancy for an appointed trustee, we are nonetheless starting the recruitment process, so that we have one waiting in the wings to take office late next year. We've already received some expressions of interest, but it's not too late to inquire about being an appointed trustee. So please do contact Caroline in the first instance. We've also explained in the annual report that in addition to the 7 appointed trustees, we have in council 2 nominated trustees currently, and we're expecting one more to be nominated soon. These nominated trustees are nominated by chapter, by the way. And we also have our 2 ex officio trustees, Dean David and the Lord Lieutenant, and the Lord Mayor, who will be joining us shortly later on this afternoon, who is our honorary civic representative. And we can also appoint an associate who is a non-trustee, where it's felt that we would benefit from their specific skills and experience. Now, I won't go into detail about the grants that we've given to our cathedral this year, and I'm delighted that Dean David spoke about the Canterbury Youth Choir, which was launched in January. Certainly those of us who were privileged enough to be able to go to their concert on Monday evening, we did all have to get our hankies out. And it's been a real privilege, as I say, to have attended these concerts, and they are joining the Massed Voices next year of the Big Friendly Sing on the 24th of April. So come along to listen to them, but it may well be that you get a chance to hear them before that date anyway, but Caroline will no doubt keep us posted. And it's good to be able to support singing for the young and for the not so young, because the not so young do really enjoy the monthly friendly singing that we do with our Assistant Director of Music, Jamie Rogers, who is also going to be pulling out all the stops later this afternoon. Now, before I hand over to Caroline for a proper report, I do want to thank all our trustees for the not inconsiderable time that they devote to the Friends. There are lots of reports and documents to read, and that's before they come to any of the meetings. And the talent and experience that they bring to their role is next to nothing. You certainly can't run a charity now without the input and dedication of trustees, or indeed without skilled staff. We'd be lost without our 2 Carolines. Oh, sorry, am I pressing something? are two Carolines who keep us on the straight and narrow, not only legally but financially as well. And of course they keep the office running smoothly. And they dream up the programme of events. And it was only yesterday that Caroline was finalising a gem of a future talk. And they ensure that everything runs smoothly, both in events like this and our holidays as well. And I said gem, and that's a little clue, but you won't know anything about that as yet. So, but when you get your programme of events in the future, you'll think back, oh, is that what she meant? So my grateful thanks to them. And with our 100th anniversary year just a few months away, I know Caroline has some announcements to make today, but I know she's also going to be keeping other things under her hat. So at that point, can I hand over to our Chief Officer?
So, this is our 98th Friends Day since our charity was founded in 1927, because the first one, of course, was held in 1928, and it's a pleasure to welcome a full house again this year. And I just wanted to let you know we are recording the sessions this afternoon, so that friends around the world can be part of Friends Day later on when it's their own time zone. So I thought it might be a good idea for us to take a fresh look at why we are friends. So the object of our charity is the preservation of the fabric of Canterbury Cathedral, the general maintenance of the cathedral, its activities and services, its ornaments and furnishings, and to assist the Dean and Chapter for members to give their personal services with promoting, as far as may be charitable in law, public interest in the cathedral, its history and work. So all of our charity's activities are guided by these objects, which form a major part of our constitution. And I wanted to start by reassuring friends that we follow Charity Commission guidance and charity law with all our governance in the pursuit of our objects. So we have the following committees: Finance, Grants, Management Committee, Friends Council, a working group which is used when needed, a Nominations Committee, again when needed, at the moment a 100th Anniversary Committee, and occasionally trustees who must always serve on one committee, which is the council, and they may also usually serve on at least one other committee. There are terms of reference for all of these committees. So the Charity Commission rightly has many expectations of us to prove that we are a well-run charity and transparent. So as part of this, we have the following policies and procedures: anti-bullying and harassment, complaints, engaging external speakers, equality, diversity and inclusion, financial management and control, financial reserves policy, membership and donations and legacies policy, a risk policy and a risk register, a safeguarding policy, serious incident reporting policy, staff and trustee expenses policies. Now, if any of you ever want to read one of these policies, you are very welcome to ask me, and I will send them to you with pleasure. So, the interesting bits. What have the Friends been up to over the last 12 months? Quite a lot. So we've had a number of talks. Jane Austen in Kent, Pepper, the King of Spices, Stone on Stone, the building of medieval cathedrals. 2 talks on Becket, 2 talks on Belgian cities, and a series of talks on the history of the city of Canterbury. 45 friends came with me on a trip to Chester. And, well, Cheshire itself, the county of Cheshire. We looked around lots of stately piles, historic places, and we also visited both Chester and Leicester cathedrals while we were there. During the last 12 months, we've enjoyed lots of music, coffee concerts, and a big thank you to our choral scholars who always sing for us at those. Our monthly friendly singing sessions, which Janet's already mentioned, and our late summer serenade, which the lay clerks and choral scholars gave us. We had our big biennial Big Friendly Sing, which brought together over 200 singers from across the UK and some from Europe and the United States to sing Mozart's Requiem. This thoroughly enjoyable event is made all the more so by the teamwork of all our colleagues in the music department and our vergers who work with us to make this such a huge event every other year. We raised £8,500 that day, and from that event, the idea of making music to make new music very much appealed, and this one event more than covered our grant to support the new Canterbury Youth Choir, which Dean David mentioned earlier. It was a very pleasing result. So the next big Friendly Sing, as Janet has mentioned, is in 2027, and as part of our teamwork and also our showcasing of the results of the 2025 Big Friendly Sing, we're delighted that the Canterbury Youth Choir will be joining us to sing in the performance of Fore's Requiem. We'll be launching that event in the autumn, so watch out for details in your Friendly Friday newsletters and other things. So our partnership with the Royal School of Needlework goes from strength to strength. It continues the relationship we've had since the 1930s, when the Royal School of Needlework created the very first Friends banner. We have about 3 classes each year, and we use, they're based on designs inspired by the cathedral's glass, stonework and architecture. We've had people from America, Scotland, the West Country, Australia, Canada, all across the South East and London, who come specially to Canterbury for that, and always seem to stay for Evensong afterwards, many of them for the first time. Now, no Friends Year would be complete without our summer festival, our Friends Day, which is where we are today, and our carol service and dinner every year, and both are always a sellout. Last Christmas, our raffle raised £3,000, so many thanks to all of you who took part in that. And if you've any ideas for any prizes for this year's Christmas raffle, please let me know. So lots of thank yous to all our colleagues who help us make the Friends what we are today. All the things they do behind the scenes to support us, and to Caroline in the Friends office, to Rachel in the fundraising department, who completes all the grant applications on behalf of Chapter, to Gerardo, who helps us at all our talks and is helping us today, to the lodge staff, who always support us so with a real Benedictine welcome every time we have an event here. There are lots of people who give their time and talents to give talks for the Friends, so thank you to them as well. So our database is currently showing, as of yesterday afternoon, 4,600 Friends in 18 countries, and that's our highest number in well over 10 years. It's 300 more than we had this time last year when I stood here, because we enrolled 294 Friends from our website enrolments last year. And also thanks to our ambassadors on the Friends desk, who work every day to promote the Friends to the members of the public who are visiting the cathedral. Last year we had enrolled 197 members, so it's a real uptick which we're really pleased to report. So, as I said last year, we shouldn't be complacent, because in the 1930s Miss Babington had 8,000 Friends. Our challenge is to make that number possible again. So 2027 marks our centenary. We are the first charity of our kind in the UK. We've got lots of celebrations planned. Some have been in the making for 5 years. More will be revealed next year, but we're hoping that you will be a key part of these activities. The Dean has mentioned the Dean's Challenge. We're going to be challenging you. The Dean will challenge you personally to be part of our celebrations. Now, one of the things that we're going to try and compile is a history of the Friends. And one of our friends, Liz Finn, is going to be helping us with compiling this history. So I'd like Liz to stand up. This is our person. If you have any reminiscences of the Friends, or know any snippets of Friends history that you think are worth sharing, we think they are already and we don't know what they are, please get in touch with us, and we will hopefully put you in touch with Liz, and she will help us to compile that. So as soon as you get in touch, the better. Thank you, Liz. Now, we were delighted that King Charles agreed to become our first Friend on the roll at his accession. He followed in the footsteps of his mother and his grandfather, and we'll mention in passing Edward VIII as well. I am thrilled to tell you that only about a week ago we learned that Archbishop Sarah has agreed to become our president. So as Friends, we are in very good company. Now, I just wanted to end with a quote that I read the other day from Father Patrick Vanderbost, who is the founder of Christian Art website. Deep friendships are among God's greatest gifts. And there is nothing wrong with having a small circle of people to whom we are especially close. Yet authentic friendship should never become exclusive or closed in on itself. True friendship expands the heart rather than narrowing it. Just as the love between the Father and the Son overflows towards others and invites others into that communion, So our friendships should make us more welcoming, more generous, and more attentive to those around us. The strongest friendships are not those that build walls around themselves, but those that become a source of encouragement, hospitality, and kindness for others. Thank you for being a friend. Now, I'm very sorry, but you're stuck with me because I'm going to read on behalf of Ian Morris, our Treasurer, the financial report. So, we are reporting on the financial year which ended on the 31st of March this year. So, he has asked me to tell you that donations and legacies, including membership income, came to £190,159, which compares with £160,000 last year. Included in this figure were legacies receivable of £74,989. Now that compares with £45,612 in the previous financial year. Historically, legacy income has funded a significant proportion of the grants made by the charity to the Cathedral. We are extremely grateful to friends who make a point of leaving a legacy to our charity in their wills. We are also grateful to the families of friends who designate the charity as the recipient of retiring collections at funerals and memorial services. Friends may wish to be reminded that bequests to charitable organisations totaling 10% or more of the net value of an estate result in a 10% reduction in the rate of inheritance tax payable. It is therefore often possible for even quite modest bequests to result in a significant tax saving. So this year we offer our gratitude to Miss C. Boydell, Miss A.C. Price, Miss E.M. Smith and Miss P.A. Smith, sisters, and Miss J. Thurple. Every gift in every will makes a difference, and if you are thinking of estate planning, I would be happy to speak to anybody in confidence if they would like to contact me. So our fundraising activities are principally our friends events, and after costs we raised a net of £24,086. That compares to £10,000 in the previous year. Our investment income from funds managed on our behalf by Saracen and Partners generated an income of £30,947. The comparison to 2025 is £34,576. A yield of approximately 2.5%, which was 2.9% last year. And I think it's worth pointing out at this point, of course, things have happened in the world which has affected our investments. The total value of our investments under management increased in the year by £238,156, having taken account of net additional units purchased and revaluation of gains. The income from the funds is reinvested as it is received. Other shareholdings decreased by £633, and during the year an additional liquidity account was opened with Saracen to maximise interest income from more readily available funds. Bank and other interest of £14,715 was received in the year, compared with £11,971 the year before. So grants payable during the year, the charity agreed to commit a net total funding of £590,614. This compares to 2025 financial year of £47,362. And these were all towards various projects. The detail is set out in note 6 of the financial statements that you've all been sent, but the grants gifted by the charity to the Cathedral in the past year have been many and varied. The following were agreed by Council on your behalf and pledged during the year. The Community Youth Choir, to be called the Canterbury Youth Choir, £6,913. A Benedictine welcome, the refurbishment that Dean David has spoken of inside the Christchurch Gate, £331,715. Deanery Conservation Phase 2, again, Dean David mentioned this is the phase downstairs with the commercial kitchen and the accessible lavatories. That was £159,445. Glass 100 Tracery, which is to conserve and stabilise a masonry bay, number 31 in the Great Cloister, £40,501. And then welcoming our cathedral community, which is to provide post-Eucharist tea, coffee and biscuits every Sunday, £13,000 and 8. Our supports costs, which are staff, premises and admin expenses, plus governance costs, have increased from 122,389 in the previous year, decreased to 119,812 this year. In 2022, the charity agreed with the Cathedral that we should pay our own staff costs. So the annual report of the Friends of Canterbury Cathedral for the year ended 31st of March 2026 was approved by Friends Council on the 25th of June. May I seek the agreement of those friends who are present today to formally adopt this annual report. Thank you. I will now submit this to the Charity Commission on your behalf later this month.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I think it's always fascinating to hear what we've been doing. Some of us have attended probably most of the talks, but you know what it's like. You think, was that last year? I thought it was the year before. Right, well, we have got to any other business, and I think we're just about on time, aren't we? So, does anybody have any other business? Is there anything anyone would like to raise? We have got a microphone.
Thank you. I've often been wondered by the church commissioners. This seems to be a governing body of the Church of England, but they do seem very rich. Is there any reason why they can't help out on this well-being people and other churches?
So the question was about the church commissioners. They've got a lot of money, why aren't they helping more, essentially, is the question. And the commissioners' resources come from something called Queen Anne's Bounty, and also from the creation of the commissions themselves and the offices of bishops and so on. And there was a great deal of shifting around of Church of England assets to create the pot of money. Some of those assets did indeed come from cathedrals. About a third of the fund overall, I think, had its origins in English cathedrals. But there is no requirement in law for them to give money directly back to cathedrals, and the way in which the governance is currently shaped for the commissioners, they are not able to fund capital projects of any kind other than those associated with their own properties. So they can fund the restoration of the old palace, but they can't fund Canterbury Cathedral's projects. A number of us with others are asking questions, well, what within the current legislation would need to change in order to allow them to give more money? They do give some grants which we can apply for, which help with sustainability and development. So for example, we've had consultancy work paid for via the commissioners who've helped us along the way, and which we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. But the optics of it do not look good, is what I would say. But making the changes, they cannot give us money straightforwardly as it is. They provide a grant to pay my stipend and the stipend of two colleagues. So that's a total grant funding of 130,000 a year is what we receive from the commissioners.
Thank you very much, Dean David. Are there any other, or is there any other business? There isn't, in which case, I think that's the end of our AGM. So, closing at 2:10. So now we have a film to watch, Stories of the Miracle Windows.
So I will just explain that you may remember that we gave a number of grants to the investigations of the miracle windows over the last 8 years now, and our most recent grant was via the Guy and Eleanor Maynard Trust through the Friends of Canterbury Cathedral, we gave a grant which has allowed for some interpretation films to be made to record the investigations on the windows and also tell some of the stories in the windows. I have shared with you a link to these. They're called Miracles and Masterpieces, I do believe. And there is a fantastic film which is 15 minutes long, which I would have loved to have shown you today, but it's just too long for today. But I have pulled out one film for you to see, which is about Etheldreda. This film is 3 minutes long, and the reason why I've chosen this is because you may have noticed the hoarding around by the west door of the cathedral, which is about this year's summer theme, which is the women of Canterbury Cathedral. So that's why I chose Etheldreda, and any minute now I can show you the film.
So at the bottom of the window, we have the story of Etheldreda of Canterbury. Now, Etheldreda's problem was that she had a quartan fever, which is one that recurs every 3 days. It could well have been a form of malaria. And you can imagine how awful this was for her. Benedict said that she was so sick, she looked like she was near death. So we see Etheldreda here in a green dress and a red cloak, and she's looking very shrunken and sick. You can tell she's really definitely not feeling well. And next to her, behind her, is a female companion. And it's really interesting that all of the sick women in the miracle windows have a female helper. Then next to her, on the bottom right of the panel, you see Becket's tomb with its 2 openings, and there's a candle and a money box there as well. So above the tomb, there are 2 figures. One is a monastic servant, and he is holding up an ampulla of Becket's blood. And he looks back towards a monk who is stirring up the blood and a lot of water, and that is going to be the medicine for Etheldreda to drink. And what I really love about this is that we've got the original heads here, and you can see the monastic servant looking back at the monk, making sure he's doing it right, and the monk looking towards Etheldreda with this wonderful look of care and concern. So in the second panel, what we see is that the monastic servant and Etheldreda have switched positions. And at this point now, Etheldreda is standing next to the monk, who is holding the bowl for her to drink. And again, we have the original pieces of glass here, and Etheldreda is holding the bowl with one hand to steady it, and the monk has his hand up in blessing, in hopes that this is going to heal her, which in fact it does. It's interesting to see that Etheldreda is drinking from a bowl. Now, we usually drink liquids from a cup or from a glass, but in the Middle Ages, they usually drank from wooden bowls. Now, this bowl that she's drinking from looks quite plain, but it could be that they had a special bowl for pilgrims to drink this special Becket relic water from. And these special bowls were called mazers. So we don't know for sure whether mazers were used at the tomb, but I wouldn't be surprised. So the Victorian restorer who worked on this window actually made a mistake with Etheldreda's story. He put them in the wrong order. And what we've been able to do, now that the panels are in the studio, is to swap the order and actually do some work on these panels, and the work was done by a conservator here named Joy Mead. And that means that when the window goes back into the cathedral, we're going to be able to read this story in the proper order for the first time in 150 years.
So if you haven't seen any of these films, I really would recommend that you go and have a look at them, because they really are fantastic. They are on the Cathedral website. If you go into the search box at the top and just put the words Miracle Windows, you'll find the link, and you can sit down with a cup of tea for about an hour and have a really, really good time. So I'm now going to get this on the screen. And we are hoping that John Crump has come back from a site meeting somewhere else in Canterbury for another project that he's working on. So here's our next speaker, and hopefully he'll be with us any minute now.
Hello. That is working. Excellent. Ooh. So we have no IT malfunctions. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John. I'm the masonry manager. I have met some of you, but not everyone, obviously. And I am, first of all, no, it's all right. Thank you, Fiona, for inviting me to talk. I'm going to talk about Christchurch Gate. So, as everyone knows, we've just finished a big project there, so I'm going to talk a lot about the most recent phase, because that's the one that I've been most involved with, but we'll start off with a little bit about the history of the gate and the previous phases of repair, and yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure people will have questions, so we'll probably just wait till the end. I think there's the questions at the end, if that's all right. Okay? Okay. Here we are. So, the history, so just to start off with a little bit about the history of Christchurch Gate. I'm sure that some of you are really familiar already and probably know far more than me, but the gate was built in the first decades of the 16th century. Now, everybody, there's lots of different theories about dates for the gate, but the best guess is that it was completed around 1520. So, we're not sure exactly. Some people have favoured a much earlier date, so when I say much earlier, sort of 15-year earlier date. But there are some records from the 1520s, not everything, we've lost quite a lot of records over the time. But the best records are financial ones, and we have the rents from the shops within the precincts. And in 1520, they were very depressed on the grounds, and it's written in the records, of the restoration work that was going on in the gate. So no one was coming in, so no one wanted to have shops in the precincts, which is why we think the date of 1517, which has long been assumed as the finishing date, is probably not 100% accurate. And then in 1521, the rents rebound back up. So we think that 1520 is the sort of best guess for completion. The start, the beginning of work at the gate is much more contentious. There's lots and lots of assumptions that it was built to either celebrate or commemorate the marriage, as it was, of Prince Arthur and Catherine of Aragon, but the dates don't really work with that. So Prince Arthur, as you probably know, died in 1502, and it's very unlikely that the gate was started before 1502. There's lots and lots of academic research into this. It's all to do with heraldry, which I have to confess I don't really understand, but there's lots that can be read up on it. But we do have other evidence of people leaving money, bequests being made to the gate from around 1504, which is sort of best guess for the start of construction. It's always been assumed it was built under prior Godson, but we know that in his will he left money for the completion of the gate in 1517. So it all points towards the date on the front of the gate not being entirely accurate. Since then, up till about 1900, we have a sort of general assumption that nothing really happened to the gate, it was just left to decay. That's not quite true. The turrets were taken down around 1800, 1803. There's a story of them being taken down, so the cathedral clock can be seen from the high street. That may or may not be part of the story, but we do know that they were in a ruinous condition, so they were taken down on grounds of safety, essentially. The parapets were rebuilt at the same time, and then there was further work in the 19th century on the north side, so the precinct side. But all in all, by 1900, everybody may have seen some of these images of the gate pre-restoration, and by 1900, the masonry of the gate is in an absolutely terrible condition. So we had centuries of erosion, centuries of damage, lack of maintenance. So, and you can see the image on the left that all of the masonry, all of the details essentially melted away. And it was acknowledged that things had to be done. W.D. Carrow started a phase of repair in 1912. And the first phase was the identification that the hood moulds were a major contributing factor to, and this is quite important, come back later on. The hood moulds were a major contributing factor. So the hood moulds were designed to throw water away from the building. Because they were so eroded, they weren't doing that anymore, and it was accelerating erosion. So what Carrow did in the war in 1917 was installed new hood moulds and swing courses. So you can see the new masonry in that picture from 1917, not carved, so it was put in as blocks of masonry, uncarved. And it stayed that way until the and what else happened up until 1934 was that the Friends moved into the gate. So the Friends office was located, newly formed Friends, in 1928, moved in to the first floor of the gate. So, in the early 30s, and this again is important, this is history repeating itself, as we'll hear, a big piece of stone fell off the gate, landed in the bottom market. So the 1917 repairs were strictly temporary, holding repairs, was never intended to be finished. And there was an extensive restoration, as a result of this piece of stone falling, obviously the previous erosion, an extensive repair, restoration project. got underway, 1934, fully funded by the Friends. So I think there was a donation of, I think the target was £5,000, I think there was a donation of £4,000, a private donation, which is about £400,000 now, I think. And that enabled a very thorough restoration of the facade of the gate. Principally in cement, so in plastic repair. So W. Carrow did not replace the eroded stones. He built over the top of those stones in cement. This is really important for our subsequent work. And what that looks like is like this. So this is a piece of the gate. It's removed actually this piece as part of our work, but you can see we've got all the detail there, but this is made of cement. And this was stuck on to the stone. You can see little bits of stone and the pegs at the back here that they used to attach this cement to the old stone. It's a great job. Quite unusual for that period to do this amount of plastic repair, and you know, on appearances, very successful. We've got an image of the gate from, that must be post 1937, because that's when the turrets were rebuilt. But very smart, all the mouldings reinstated, some of them to the original plan, some of them invented by Carrow, but altogether a massive improvement. We had new parapets to Carrow's design. They didn't bear much resemblance to the medieval, but he rebuilt the turrets and parapets. We've got an image there of the guys actually working stone. I like that one because that is, we know where that building is. That is where we currently store the MUPE, actually, which was also funded by the Friends. Thank you very much. So we've got a good link going on with the Friends and the gate at the moment. Okay, so moving on. So Carrow's repairs were only ever intended, and he was open about this, as a temporary fix. They weren't stone replacements. They were mortar repair to preserve the appearance and to try and prevent decay. So by 1998, the gate was starting to show its age again. And in 1998, we had another piece of stone falling into the bottom of near miss with a member of the public. And that prompted a series of investigations. Now, those investigations revealed potentially lots and lots of issues. Revealed the scale of the cement repair, quite how much there was, and also the fact that some of that repair was starting to fail. And that set in train really decades, and it is decades, of investigations and planning into what to do with the gate. So we have here the archaeological report, which is very important to us. It's formed the basis of lots of our design work. This is from 2010. So we're getting an idea there of how long things have been in planning for the gate. As much as we've only been up there physically working for 5 years, the work has been, the planning has been ongoing for many, many years. This all resulted in a conservation symposium around the gate in 2015 to decide what to do. What were we actually going to do? So one of the biggest issues was the cement, the plastic repair, the cement repair that Carrow had applied to most of the face of the building. And there's a couple of images there. There's one of the angels from the angel course, and some of the decorative stonework, and you can see that that's all cement. And the issue was, as you can see on the angel, cracks were starting to appear in some of the cement between the original stone and the new cement. And that was resulting with things falling off the building. So the question for us was how to repair. So normally cement is our enemy. We'll try and remove cement, but in this case there was such a lot of cement, the whole building is faced with cement essentially, we couldn't do that with any sort of reasonable budget. And also, it was found that the cement stone interface was failing in certain areas, but in other areas was better than expected. So, how to repair that? So, there were lots and lots and lots of debate, resulting in this symposium, resulting in lots and lots and lots of documents, lots more investigations after that. And then, of course, search for funding, which we were lucky to secure. And that led to our first phase. So within the Cathedral journey, within the lottery project, a huge amount of work on the gate, but funded separately, funded by a private donation. And what we established as part of all of this work was that, again, as Caro established, the string courses and the projecting elements were the problem. Now, he had already replaced all of this, but what we found with all of the investigations was that they weren't performing an adequate function in throwing the water away. So the erosion underneath the string courses was still accelerated, even after his intervention. So what we had to do, was replace them again. So we replaced the 1917 string courses on the principal cardinal below the angels and the secondary one above the shields, which you can see on the gate. And there's a couple of images there of some of the work. I'm not going to dwell on this too much because I really want to talk about the most recent phase, but a couple of images of some of the work that went on there. Wasn't just the strings, there was other stones up there within the parapets, the turrets, and obviously the shield course, there's one there. A new roof, mustn't forget all the other trades, not just stones, so that brought us to the end of the first phase, that brought us to the second phase. So obviously, why did we stop? Well, we ran out of money. We ran out of time within the lottery project. So, more money that we knew we hadn't finished. This is, everyone probably remembers the gate looking like this. This is when we finished the first phase, but before we put the scaffold up for the second phase. So you can see the line that we stopped at. Lots and lots of unfinished work at the lower third of the gate. But the Human chapter decided that we had to finish, and we had the money from the stone auction from the Great South Window. So people probably remember the auction, some of you probably bought things in the auction, and that money was made available to the masonry team to essentially to finish the gate. So what did that look like? What did we have to do? Well, the lower third of the gate is very, very delicate medieval masonry. Lots and lots of surviving medieval masonry in a varying levels of condition, but very delicate. And it needed to be cleaned. And we used lots of different cleaning methods higher up in the gate, but when it came down to the lower third, the feeling was, because the masonry was so delicate, we had to adopt our most sensitive cleaning method, which is the laser. It's laser cleaning. So the entire bottom third of the gate from the bottom market side was laser cleaned. What the laser, there is the laser, and there's a couple of images being used, and then you can see, particularly this one on the end, the effect that it actually has on cleaning. And what the laser does, again, I'm not a physicist, but what my understanding is that the light energy from the laser is absorbed by the pollution, but not by the stone, and it will pop the pollution off the building. Very successful, but very time consuming. Took a long, long time. That's the cleaning. Next, we've got, obviously I want to talk about the pilasters. It wasn't only the pilasters, we also had repairs to do on the inscription course, which is now all covered in gold paint, but 5 new stones up there, a couple of images there of Jordan working on the stones and them being put in. Very tricky in a way to fix because we had the existing first phase polychrome, so the gold leaf of the painting around that area that we couldn't disturb. So there was some sensitive chopping out. And then, so the pilasters. So the pilaster buttresses on the gate. This is the carving that everyone hopefully has seen, I'm sure you have, and we can see from the street. So this was the biggest part, from a masonry point of view, the biggest part of the second phase. There were 21 panels, I think. 15 of those were so eroded that we had no choice but to replace them. Again, we're replacing them because they were unsafe. Bits of cement were falling off, like this, chunks of cement like this. But we had to put them back in and we had to recarve them. So there were 15 panels to design, carve and to put in. And there was a wealth of information to work from. There was a lot of original detail, medieval detail. There was a lot of 1930s cement repairs, there were 1930s replacements. And there was some detail that was completely lost. No information at all. So what did we do? Combination of copying of the existing, so where the information is there, we took the information directly from the building. Research, so a huge amount of research has been undertaken already by the Canterbury Archaeological Trust in 2010. And that was the basis of our research. So they had worked through all of the archival images to establish what, to their best understanding, what carving had been present. And that was our basis. But in many cases, you couldn't tell, or the imagery was so poor that we had an idea of shape, but not of detailed design. So we had a long design process to get these things made. And starting with sketches, you can see some of the sketches, the drawings, the sort of architectural drawings, and then the sketches, and then the clay models. So as well as sketches, we needed to have a physical maquette. So I've got the maquettes here, the plaster casts of the maquettes, but they all had to be modelled. They had to be modelled by hand, and that process took months and months and months. Partly it was a long process, but also partly to get consent. So the consent process was always very important. So we were in close contact with the architects, surveyor to the fabric, and the FAC throughout to make sure everybody was happy with our designs. Once we had everything okay, we cast them. So let's say months and months of work, subject to approval. Picture of the maquettes there, and this at the bottom, you can see what we were working from. I hope everyone can see there the original. That's one that's been removed from the building. The sketch, the design sketch, and then the final maquette that's been made from the clay mold. So that's the design work. So the design work, in many ways, is the tricky bit. But once you've done the designs, you still have to make the stones. They don't make themselves. And here we've got, this is the start of our stone. So the stone, people may probably already know, but our stone comes from France in big blocks, very big blocks. You can see Emlyn there measuring up. And we then cut that to size. So we cut that to the exact sizes that we need, determined by our drawings and our templates. Like these. So this is a template for the carved string course. That's the size of the stones in section. So very long things. No carving on them as yet. So then they're made off the workshop, they're carved. Then working one of the stones. So this is the physical shape of the block. This is not the carving yet, this is the physical shape of the block. And that in itself can be days and days or even weeks of work depending on the complexity of the stone. Once we've done that, we have to carve the actual panels from the maquettes. So this is the way carving has been done for 12th century, or millennium, let's say, rather than century. We have the maquette next to us, and we take that detail, we transfer that onto the stone. And we've got Ben and Emma there working away, carving the detail onto the previously made stones. Picture of the panel there in the workshop. We will always assemble them just to check, just before all of the carving is running, and it should be. It wasn't only the plaster panels, so the Renaissance design in the pilasters meets more traditional medieval design in the portals of the arches. And there were some figurative stuff to do. We had 5 figures to carve. This is a bird. It's the bird on the left-hand side of the wicket gate. If you were out there and you were coming in. And you can see in the top image the level of detail that we had to work from. So again, consulting our design report, the suggestion was there'd been a winged creature. Not sure what it was, but something with wings. You could identify the wings. Produced the maquette for approval, and then in this case we're using a pointing machine to transfer that information directly onto the stone. And then there it is in place, which the photos don't really do it justice, so I encourage everyone to go and have a look to see the detail. But all carved completely by hand. As with all of our work, as everyone I think knows, we're working traditionally up there. We're producing stones by hand. We're not using machines, saws. Everything is being done by hand. I've got tools out here, but this is exactly what we have used to make these stones. And a couple more. We've got Jordan there measuring this little guy. He looks a bit sad in the second one. But the problem with clay maquettes, they dry out, they shrink, they crack, and you can see his head has fallen off in that one. And I've actually got his head. Here is his head. Here, the little guy. It's small, it's shrunk, so this is smaller than life size now. Again, we had lots and lots of information about what these could have looked like, not exactly, but lots of information from our archaeological report. And the suggestion with these beasts was that they weren't specific animals, specific creatures, they were generic, sort of rabbit, squirrel, dog, cat, something. And they were being pursued by the heraldic predatory winged beast in the rank above. So we were trying to give them an anxious, sort of humanistic, worried expression. And I think we captured it really well. He looks really, I don't know if he looks worried or looks really, really sad. But anyway, when you see them on the gate, I think you can appreciate what we've been trying to capture, which is a classic medieval motif to have humanistic expressions on the animals. And these are new designs. This is based on these. This is a piece of cement. This is one of the cement repairs that's fallen off. You can see how crude the cement repairs were. So for all that it was a fantastic job, huge amount of work, the actual detail is poor. You can't really get better detail than this in cement. So they did as good a job as they could with the medium they were working with. But this is our sort of finer, more refined detail back to the medieval, and I hope everybody agrees when you see how successful that one has actually been. And then the thing that everybody always forgets about stonemasonry is making the stones is only half the battle. They don't do any good sat on a pallet. They have to be in the building. What we're trying to do is put them in. So after we've made them, we have to fix them. And this is some of the plasters actually being installed by me. Always a challenge to fix stones. They're heavy, but they are fragile, particularly so with these very heavily carved stones. you just can't knock them, damage them, anything like that. You will cause severe damage. Yeah, it was a lovely job, but it was a challenge to get in there. But we did. Everyone probably knows we had the deadline of the installation of the Archbishop, which we met with a month to spare, which was just a job. And this is some of the work as it's going in again. So we've got the little dragon chasing this little guy. The little dragon is based on the very limited amount of cement repair that we had. That's the head of that creature, and that's the newly carved one that Ben actually did a lovely job on that blue guy. Not only carvings, we also have plenty of other stones in there, but what we call piecing repairs. So our philosophy is always to try and conserve as much stone as possible. So in this case, these are some of the capitals, which again you'll see if you go through, where we will only replace the portion of a much larger stone with the piece that we need to. Quite complicated setting out, quite complicated masonry, and quite complicated fixing, sometimes more complicated than making a whole new stone. But this was the last stone to go into the gate, which is why we took a lovely little piece of stone in its own right now. See the other scared piece on the other side. So there we are, and that now is the new gate in its glory. I hope that, I'm sure everybody has seen it. I can't really capture it in photos, so I would urge everyone to go and have a look. But so, from our point of view, why was this such a good project for us? Why does it matter so much? And I think there's lots of reasons for that. Number one, of course, is that the gate is, for the cathedral, it's our front door. It's our link with the city, so the physical link. It's also the point of entry for the pilgrims, as it has been for hundreds of years, 500 years. And it's not only the people coming in, it's the people in the bottom market, it's the rest of the city walking past and seeing that the cathedral is there, the cathedral is open for business, and that we are taking care of the structures, taking care of the fabric in the way that we should. And that's why I think having been able to complete the gate at such a high standard was really important for the cathedral. For the team, for our team, obviously it's a fantastic job, it's a very unique opportunity to get this level of carving. But it's also really nice for us because, most of our work is not really seen. Most of our work is 100 feet up in the air, tucked around the back of some tower, that nobody ever sees, apart from the pigeons. And that's why for us as a team, I think we're all really happy to have masonry work on display at our level, because it's pretty much unique for us in the precincts to have the work right there. And the team is very proud of the project. I think, like yourself, certainly very proud of the team, you guys, for what they've done. And then what's next for the gate? So I think, as probably everybody knows, the next thing for the gate is the conversion, or but the change of use to accommodation, which I think is funded by the Friends. So the link between the Friends and the gate is 100 years old and going strong. And I think very important that we recognise that buildings need to have a use. We can't have these buildings as empty shells, they need to have a use. We have done all of this work on the outside, on the roof, stabilisation and structural work, but now the gate is going to be used. It's not just going to sit there for another 100 years as an empty relic. It's going to be used. I think that's a really important thing for the gate. And that's it for me. Thank you.
I don't know if anyone can hear you. We've got 10 minutes before we go on to our next part of the afternoon. Caroline has a microphone. We've probably got about 5 minutes for questions. If anybody has any specific questions for John, and I can see 2 hands going up immediately.
Thank you very much for your talk. The maquettes, how do you get them from there onto the stone? Do you rub them like a brass?
A good question. We will transfer the information by measuring with maquettes. So these are in low relief, they're flat carvings, so we're going to do it by measuring. So we're going to take a point and we're going to transfer that. Well, I've got this maquette. This one here. So there's this stone was designed, was carved. Then what we found was we didn't have enough space for the animal carving. So we had to recarve this stone. So that's why we've got this little spare stone here. But we will take a dimension and we'll transfer it onto the stone. So they carve using measuring, but with dividers. Just as, again, you know, if you see any imagery of a medieval mason, they're always going to be holding their compasses, and that's why they're using them to draw, but they're also using them to transfer information.
Hello, thank you for that fascinating talk. Obviously you're dealing with fairly large pieces of stone, which are obviously heavy. You've also mentioned 2 occasions that we know of where pieces of masonry have fallen on unsuspecting members of the public, almost. Could you just elaborate a little on how, after the stone is carved, it is actually fixed in place?
Yeah, good question. So we shy away from any sort of engineering fix. So the idea of sticking something onto the building, because we're never sure how that will work. So an engineering fix would be, for example, a stone pinned into place with stainless steel and resin. But the danger there is that we don't know how effective that fixing will be in 50 or 100 or 200 years' time. So we are aiming to fix everything with traditional masonry techniques, where the stones are held in place with by gravity, essentially. Gravity and friction. So the stones themselves will lock up because they are part of the structure and they're locked in together, essentially. The issue with things falling off is when you have projecting elements, and that is a weather-driven erosion thing. We can't really avoid that. We're thinking we've got between 250 and 300 years before we now have to worry about that again with the new stones. So, yeah, I'm quite happy. But no, we're fixing stones in traditional, just as we do on the Cathedral. We're trying to use traditional techniques on the basis that the building has been there for 1,000 years and it's still standing.
We've just got time for one more question.
My hearing is quite poor, and I may have said already what I'm going to ask. We've recently been in Bristol, near Caen, and of course I know that the figure is made of Caen stone. Is that all Caen stone as well?
Good. That's a very good question. And the answer is no, it's not. So there is still a mine in Caen. So obviously, as everyone probably knows, the Norman Cathedral was built with Caen stone. Most of all of the major rebuilds have been using Caen stone. The gate was originally constructed with Caen stone. There is still a mine in Caen producing stone. We have quite a lot actually in the yard at the moment. But you may have, if anybody's a geologist, you can know more about this than me, but the way the stone is laid down geologically very important to us because we need to fix the stone in the same orientation as it was laid down. Otherwise, as I said, the projecting stone, the water can get behind the layers, it's a sedimentary limestone, and big pieces of stone can fall off. And this is a problem that we find with a lot of Victorian work, for example, where they haven't embedded the stone correctly. And the problem with Caen at the moment is that the seam of stone that we need, so this is difficult to describe it because it's just a seam of stone running through a solid mass of stone, so there's meters and meters of solid rock, but within that there's a seam that we need, which is the firm stone, the firm, the harder bed. And it runs through the ground like this, and it's only about that. It's about, you can get about 10 inches of usable stone. And if you get any more, you're going into soft above and below. That's fine if the stones are only 6 inches high, but some of our pilasters were 3 feet high. And if we used Caen there, we would have to have incorporated 2 feet of soft bed. And the soft bed, as we've seen on the northwest tower, erodes very, very quickly.
So it's English stone?
So no, it's still a French stone. So we're using stone from Poitiers, further south of France. That's the closest kind of geological match that we can get to the Caen stone. It's very similar.
John, I'm really sorry. I'm
that's fine.
going to upset all the friends by saying we're going to have to stop there. But I'm going to be a bit bold and say maybe we should have an article for the Chronicle next year about this gate. And I'm going to be even bolder and say if you have any questions that you haven't been able to ask John today, email them to me and we'll see if John can answer them and I can put them into an email reply to you all. A huge thank you, John, for all the work your team has done. Today. I really do appreciate it. There is a little mini exhibition here if anyone has time, but we are now going to split into our groups. So you have two options. You can either go around the gardens with Tom, our head gardener, and he has promised that he's been looking for the gardens with shade today, or you can go into the choir now for Jamie to give a bit of an explanation about the rebuild of the organ that happened about 5 years ago. So the choice is yours. Caroline is going to lead you to the gardens, and the Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor's consort is going to also come with you to the gardens. So now is your chance to make up your decision, and then we'll all meet again in the Campanile garden at 4 o'clock.